The moment the VIP slammed his fist on the table and bellowed, "How dare a dyke like you serve me with that perverted ring on your finger? Get out before I make sure you never work again." Ariadne's world shattered in an instant, her heart pounding as every eye in the exclusive Ember and Vine turned toward her trembling hand, and the simple gold band symbolizing her marriage to Madison. The crystal chandeliers above the white tablecloth dining room suddenly felt like spotlights on a stage she had never wanted to stand on. Reginald Thorne, the hedge fund billionaire whose name appeared in every finance column, rose from his chair, his face purple with rage, pointing a thick finger directly at her chest. "I come here for discretion, not to be waited on by someone flaunting their lifestyle." Gasps rippled through the room like a wave. Phones were already out, customers filming, waitstaff frozen mid-step. Ariadne stood rooted, her black server apron suddenly feeling like a costume that had just been ripped away. She had chosen the late shift herself, insisting on anonymity to audit service quality after months of declining reviews. No one on the floor knew the quiet, efficient new hire was actually Ariadne Voss, the 30% co-founder who had poured her inheritance and every late-night strategy session into building the Ember and Vine empire from a single Tribeca location to 12 across the Northeast. The ring on her finger was the only thing she refused to hide. Madison had slipped it on during their quiet courthouse wedding 2 years earlier, and Ariadne wore it like armor. "Sir, please," she said, voice steady despite the burn in her throat. "I can have another server." "Another server who isn't shoving her agenda in my face?" Thorne cut her off, loud enough for the entire mezzanine to hear. "I want the manager. Now." Manager Elena appeared within seconds, her face pale. She had no idea who Ariadne really was either. Ariadne had used her mother's maiden name on the hiring paperwork for this undercover stint. Elena stammered apologies, already signaling security. Ariadne's gaze flicked toward the exit, calculating how fast she could leave without drawing more attention. But it was too late. A woman at the next table had angled her phone perfectly, capturing the exact second Thorne's spit flew toward Ariadne's cheek. The video was uploading before Ariadne even reached the kitchen door. In the back alley behind the restaurant, Ariadne pressed her back against the cold brick wall, dialing Madison with shaking fingers. The call connected on the second ring. "Babe, what's wrong?" Madison's voice, calm lawyer sharp, cut through the city noise. "He called me a dyke in front of the whole dining room," Ariadne whispered, the words tasting like ash. "He saw the ring. Everyone saw it." A beat of silence, then Madison's tone shifted to steel. "I'm coming. Stay right there. We'll handle this." By the time Madison arrived in her tailored gray suit, her blonde hair pulled into a no-nonsense ponytail, the alley was already buzzing with 2 more employees whispering. The viral video had hit 3,000 views in under 10 minutes. Ariadne showed her the screen. Ember Vine fail trending. Thorne's verified account already posting. Unbelievable service at so-called luxury spots. Won't tolerate agenda-driven staff. Madison's jaw tightened. She pulled Ariadne into her arms right there against the dumpster. The embrace fierce and protective. The kind of hug that said, "We are not breaking tonight." But Ariadne felt the first crack form anyway. The knowledge that silence might be the only way to protect the empire they had bled for. Inside the restaurant, Elena was already on damage control, comping Thorne's entire party and offering gift cards. She had no clue the woman she had just fired was the one who signed her paychecks. Ariadne's phone buzzed with alerts. Board members texting, asking if she had seen the clip. She hadn't answered yet. Madison drove them home to their Brooklyn brownstone in silence, one hand on the wheel, the other gripping Ariadne's knee. "We issue a statement tomorrow," Madison said. "We sue for harassment. This ends now." Ariadne stared out the window at the passing streetlights. "If we fight, everyone finds out who I really am. The chain becomes the lesbian restaurant chain. Investors pull out. Staff quit. My parents." She stopped. The thought of her conservative father in Connecticut seeing the video made her stomach twist. "Maybe we let it die down. I can stay quiet. No one knows I own it." Madison parked in their driveway, but didn't kill the engine. "You want to let a man call your wife a dyke on camera and do nothing?" The question hung between them like a blade. Ariadne didn't answer. She simply slipped out of the car, the gold ring catching the porch light as she walked inside. Behind her, the first news alert pinged. Viral restaurant meltdown. Is this the new face of discrimination? The storm had officially begun. By morning the video had 1.2 million views. Every major outlet from Page 6 to TMZ had picked it up. Ariadne sat at their kitchen island in yesterday's clothes, scrolling through comments that range from supportive strangers calling her brave to anonymous trolls echoing Thorne's slurs. Madison paced, already on her third coffee, laptop open to a draft press release. "We go public today," she said. "I'll draft the lawsuit myself. Hostile work environment, defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress. Thorne's lawyers will fold by lunch." Ariadne closed her eyes. "And when they dig into my ownership stake, the board will panic. We're weeks from the IPO filing. One whiff of controversy and the underwriters walk." She had built Ember and Vine on the promise of quiet luxury, not activism. The irony that her own marriage ring had triggered the collapse tasted bitter. Her phone rang her mother. Ariadne let it go to voicemail, but the text followed immediately. "Call me. Your father saw the video. We need to talk." Madison stopped pacing. "Your parents still think we're roommates, don't they?" The edge in her voice was new. Ariadne flinched. Their relationship had always been the one safe space. Now even that felt like it was being carved open for public consumption. She stood and crossed the room, taking Madison's face in both hands. "I love you more than the restaurants. But if we fight this publicly, everything we worked for could vanish. The staff in Chicago, the sous chefs in Boston, they have families too." A new alert lit up Madison's screen. Someone had posted an old photo from the chain's launch party 3 years earlier, grainy but unmistakable. Ariadne Voss, co-founder, smiling beside the original Tribeca location sign. The caption read, "Wait, is that the same woman Thorne just humiliated? She OWNS the place." The internet exploded. Within 30 minutes, stock of their private holding company dropped 8% in pre-market trading. Board member emails flooded in demanding an emergency call. Ariadne's phone rang again, this time the company's PR firm. She answered on speaker. "Ms. Voss, we need you on camera within the hour, denying any connection or we lose 3 major investors by noon." Madison's eyes met hers across the kitchen, fierce and pleading. Ariadne swallowed. "Tell them I'm unavailable." She hung up and turned to Madison. "We stay silent. I'll issue an internal memo only. No public statement." Madison stepped back as if slapped. "You're choosing the business over us?" "I'm choosing our future," Ariadne whispered. But the words felt hollow even as she said them. That afternoon Thorne's legal team filed a $10 million lawsuit against Ember and Vine for negligent hiring and emotional distress, claiming Ariadne's provocative display had ruined his business dinner. The media spun it as the owner setting up her own employee. Never mind that Ariadne and the waitress were the same person. Paparazzi camped outside their brownstone. Madison's law firm partners called, suggesting she take a leave of absence to avoid conflict of interest. Ariadne watched her wife on the phone, shoulders rigid, and felt the first real fracture form between them. By evening the board had voted to freeze Ariadne's voting shares pending an internal investigation. She sat on the edge of their bed, staring at the ring that had started everything. Madison knelt in front of her, voice soft but urgent. "We can still fight. Together. Or we can let them erase us one piece at a time." Ariadne leaned forward until their foreheads touched. Outside, camera flashes popped like fireworks. Inside, the choice felt like choosing which part of herself to kill first. The next 72 hours blurred into a nightmare of conference calls and whispered arguments. Ariadne's father finally reached her on the third ring. "Your mother and I are mortified," he said without greeting. "We raised you better than to parade your choices in public. Fix this before you lose everything we helped you build." The call ended with the unspoken threat. Come home alone or lose the family trust fund that had seeded the first restaurant. Madison overheard and didn't say a word, but the silence between them grew heavier than any shouted fight. Thorne's lawsuit gained traction when a tabloid published exclusive photos of Ariadne and Madison kissing on their honeymoon in the Hamptons, somehow leaked from a private server. The headline screamed, "Lesbian owner stages own humiliation for sympathy?" Comment sections filled with accusations that Ariadne had orchestrated the entire incident as a PR stunt. Their Brooklyn block became a circus. Neighbors who once waved now averted their eyes. Madison's biggest client, a luxury hotel group, quietly dropped her as their crisis consultant, citing reputational risk. In the middle of it all, Ariadne received an anonymous email from an Ember and Vine line cook in Philadelphia. "I've been getting death threats because of the video. Please tell us what to say." She showed Madison the message at 2 a.m. while they both stared at the ceiling, unable to sleep. "If I stay silent, they suffer," Ariadne whispered. "If I speak, we all burn." Madison rolled toward her, tracing the line of Ariadne's jaw with one finger. "Then let's burn together. I'd rather lose everything with you than watch you disappear trying to save a brand that won't save us." The turning point came at 7 a.m. when the New York Post ran a front-page story with the leaked launch photo side by side with the viral humiliation clip. The headline: "She owns the table she was thrown out of." Stock plummeted another 12%. The board called an emergency Zoom. Ariadne joined from their living room. Madison sitting just out of frame, hand resting on her knee for support. The chairman's voice crackled through the speakers. "Ariadne, the consensus is you step down temporarily. Let the narrative die." She looked at Madison. In that single glance she saw every late night they had spent sketching floor plans. Every toast they had made with cheap champagne when the second location opened. Every promise whispered in the dark that their love would always come first. Ariadne straightened. "I will not step down. And I will be issuing a public statement within the hour." The Zoom erupted in protests. She ended the call, turned to Madison, and for the first time in days felt steady. "Help me write it." They worked until dawn, crafting a statement that named Thorne's behavior without apology for who they were. When Ariadne hit publish on the company Instagram and her personal account simultaneously, the internet detonated again. This time with a wave of support from LGBT organizations and celebrities. But the hate surged too. Thorne's lawyers immediately amended the lawsuit to include false light invasion of privacy. Ariadne's mother left a voicemail sobbing that she could no longer show her face at church. Madison pulled Ariadne into bed at sunrise, both of them exhausted but wired. "Whatever happens next," Madison murmured against her hair, "we face it as wives, not as owner and consultant." Ariadne nodded. But the knot in her chest remained. The statement had bought them time. Yet every decision still carried the weight of potential ruin. The press conference was scheduled for Friday morning outside Ember and Vine's flagship location. Ariadne chose a simple black dress and the same gold ring that had started the war. Madison stood beside her in a power suit, their fingers linked openly for the cameras. Reporters shouted questions before they even reached the podium. "Ms. Voss, did you orchestrate the incident for publicity? Will you drop the lawsuit against Mr. Thorne? Is your marriage the reason investors are fleeing?" Ariadne's voice did not waver. 3 days ago a man attacked my dignity and my marriage in front of witnesses. I will not apologize for who I love. Ember and Vine was built on excellence, not exclusion, and we will continue to serve every guest with respect, something Mr. Thorne failed to extend. She announced they were countersuing for harassment and defamation. The crowd roared. Madison squeezed her hand so tightly it hurt, but the touch grounded her. That afternoon they received the first death threat delivered to their brownstone mailbox. Madison wanted to call the police immediately. Ariadne wanted to ignore it. The argument lasted until midnight, voices rising for the first time since the scandal began. "You're putting us in danger to protect your image." Madison shouted. "No," Ariadne shot back. "I'm protecting the people who work for us from becoming targets because I stayed silent." They slept in separate rooms that night, the first time in their marriage. The next morning a process server arrived with papers. Thorne had added Madison as a co-defendant, claiming she had coached the response for financial gain. Madison read the document at the kitchen table, face pale. "My firm just put me on administrative leave. They say the conflict is too great." Ariadne reached for her, but Madison pulled away. "I gave up my career for this statement. What are you willing to give up?" The question hung like smoke. Later that day Ariadne's father showed up unannounced. He refused to enter the house, standing on the stoop in his pressed khakis. Sign the papers stepping down, and we'll support you quietly. Otherwise you're on your own. Ariadne closed the door in his face, then sank to the floor, and cried for the first time since the alley. Madison found her there, knelt, and simply held her without words. In that moment the fracture began to heal. Not because the pressure eased, but because they chose to face it together. The lawsuit depositions started the following week in a downtown Manhattan conference room. Thorne sat across the polished table, smug in a navy suit, flanked by 6 attorneys. Ariadne answered every question with calm precision while Madison waited outside, legally barred from the room. When the lawyers asked if her lifestyle had influenced hiring practices, Ariadne leaned forward. My marriage has zero bearing on how we run our restaurants. The only agenda here is excellence, and Mr. Thorne violated it the moment he chose hate over humanity. The stenographer's fingers flew. Thorne's smirk faltered. Outside, Madison paced the marble hallway until Ariadne emerged. They walked to a nearby cafe in silence, then Madison spoke. The board just voted to accept a buyout offer from a competitor. They're forcing your shares at a 30% discount because of the scandal. Ariadne stopped walking. The number represented years of sacrifice. Late nights, weekends, the honeymoon they had postponed twice. She thought of the line cook in Philadelphia who had lost shifts due to protesters outside his location. She thought of Madison's empty office at the law firm. Then we fight the buyout too, she said. That night they drove to Connecticut unannounced. Ariadne's parents opened the door only after she promised no cameras. Inside the familiar living room, her father refused to look at Madison. You're choosing her over your family, he said. Ariadne took Madison's hand. I'm choosing the family I built. They left with the door slamming behind them. On the drive home Madison finally broke. I'm scared we're losing everything. Ariadne pulled the car over on the side of the highway, took Madison's face in her hands, and kissed her with the desperate passion of someone who refused to let the world win. Then we rebuild from nothing. Together. The next morning a new crisis hit. An anonymous tip to the health department claimed rodents at 3 locations. Retaliation, almost certainly orchestrated. Inspectors descended. Ariadne spent 14 hours on the phone with managers, reassuring staff, promising bonuses. When she finally crawled into bed at 3 a.m., Madison was still awake, scrolling through supportive messages from strangers. Look, she whispered, showing Ariadne a viral thread started by a young lesbian chef. If Ariadne Voss can stand up after being humiliated on camera, so can I. For the first time in weeks, Ariadne smiled. The settlement conference took place in a neutral Midtown office on a rainy Tuesday. Thorne's team opened with a demand for public apology and $5 million. Ariadne's counteroffer was simple. Drop all claims, issue a public statement condemning harassment, and donate $1 million to an LGBT youth shelter in his name. The room went silent. Thorne stared across the table, then slowly nodded. Fine. But I keep my dignity. Ariadne almost laughed. You lost that the night you attacked mine. By the following Monday the papers were signed. The buyout offer was rejected after Ariadne rallied minority shareholders with a heartfelt video posted from the Tribeca flagship. Madison standing visibly beside her, rings glinting under the lights. Stock began to recover. The health department cleared every location. Ariadne's parents sent a single text. We're proud of the business. We're still working on the rest. It wasn't everything, but it was a start. That evening Ariadne and Madison stood on the rooftop of their brownstone, city lights stretching endlessly below. Ariadne slipped her arm around Madison's waist. We almost lost each other trying to save everything else. Madison turned, resting her forehead against Ariadne's. We didn't. That's what matters. They kissed slowly, the kind of kiss that promised tomorrow would still belong to them. In the end, was choosing to fight back the right decision? Or would staying silent have saved their future?